right, so welcome. Here's our next roundtable question, and we have a lot of our PAC team here, so I'm going to go back to where you can see them all, but Beth is going to tell us first, what is our next question?
Sure. So thanks, Amanda. The first question that came up was a question from a caregiver, his wife, 62-year-old. She has dementia, and he's concerned about whether or not she is at a higher risk of getting COVID-19.
Okay, so she's younger. I'm going to say probably she's fit, but I don't know that. Sort of general health makes a difference. We do know that risk factors like diabetes, hypertension, congestive heart failure, immune disease issues, anything like that is a risk enhancer. So she's on the younger side, and if the primary diagnosis is simply a dementia, then the next question is how far into the condition is she? We currently think things like Alzheimer's happen when the brain starts building up abnormal proteins. What we're investigating is what actually instigates that or causes that or triggers that. So there are some groups that believe there's some kind of viral kind of thing that happens and then the system overreacts and starts doing things, but this is a little different. So if the person is fairly early in the condition, so in our terminology, someone in a diamond state, maybe the beginning of emerald, that person can still classically follow all kinds of safety procedures as long as there's guidance and sort of check-in monitoring for social distance, for hand washing, for sanitization, sort of all the things that we would look at for hygiene. If the person can follow those guidelines and do that, then the risk actually, there's no evidence that the risk is higher for people like that.
So, Teepa, what about, we have had a couple of people, I'll just add on to Beth's question, people who are huggers, extroverts, who they go into the hospital and they're everybody's favorite friend, except for right now, when it doesn't matter if they've washed their hands or not, everyone's at a higher risk in this situation.
Anybody who likes really connecting physically or touching people and has a hard time not doing that, who likes to air kiss, face kiss, hug, get in intimate space, anybody who enjoys that a lot and gets triggered to do that when they see a friendly face, then we want to have a strategy to reduce that risk of that happening. And one thing to think about is either, number one, getting in shield position, which means you're slightly to the front and to the left of somebody who's at risk. So you can see what's coming before they do, and you can swing yourself around into right supportive stance and go, look who's coming. And you take their hands in hand under hand and gesture ahead. And you give them a hug around the shoulders and hand under hand or two hand under hand to help manage the risk.
We're going to try to demonstrate that. I have quarantine friends here. This is Abby, who also works for PAC. And so we're going to try out what this might look like that Teepa's talking about. So if Abby's my person who we're going into this space together, and I'm worried because every time we get in there, she likes to hug or touch a lot. What I first might want to make sure is that we're both wearing gloves before we enter the space, but that we put them on as we get somewhere, not that we wear them all the time, otherwise they're not super effective. So we'll have that happen.
Amanda, here's the other thing you guys should do. You should put on an overshirt that's long sleeved so that you haven't had that on a lot. It's fairly fresh, but it does cover up arms, chests, and it gives you another layer that right afterward you could take it off, but it also is fresh for both of you. So she has on a fresh top.
So she's run to grab that now. But the thing that I want to do, and you guys can check out our video on how to introduce gloves, especially for someone, as we're talking about, in more the diamond emerald state. But I want to put them on in front of her, let her know that there's, they've got a cold going around.
Oh, cold? Ew.
A lot of coughing.
God, I don't want that.
Yeah. Here, these are for you. Now, she may not be able to put them on herself yet, but by doing this first, I'm showing, and then what I'll do is I'll sort of ask or offer help or offer support. So I've got mine on. Once I've got mine on, then I can support and help, but I give her the chance to process what they are and what we're doing with them. So, all right, yeah, oh, nice.
I got the one, but
Yeah, here. That's it.
Oh.
See if you can pull it down. Yeah.
oh,
Now, I'll ask while everybody's watching sort of off to the side, and I can't switch out, so they're the primary visual and not me, but I'll ask, is it important that Manda not touch Abby at this point? Or was it important beforehand? One of our PAC team, give me your thoughts.
Yeah, she's gloved up. She's already washed her hands before she put the gloves on, I'm presuming, right?
Okay, well, more than that. This is a trick question in some ways. Let's see who picks up on the trick.
I haven't heard Abby coughing or anything.
Okay, so she's active. Abby's not showing active symptoms. What's the other thing?
It allows her to be independent.
Yeah. She said they're in quarantine together, guys.
Oh, okay. I thought she was just talking about Abby as a person.
I thought, yeah.
I was talking about Abby and Manda. Abby and Manda can touch each other as much as they're comfortable touching each other because they're already in quarantine together or they're already sheltering together. So when we talk about this stuff, it's important to know the difference between right now, go ahead, Manda, get a little closer there. When Amanda's doing some personal things with Abby, she's not doing intimate. She is doing, now we're getting a little intimate there, but when we're doing personal things, we are inside that 6-foot zone. But if you're living with somebody with dementia, you've already agreed, I'm comfortable being inside a 6-foot zone with somebody if you're sharing space, because otherwise you have to clean everything every time one of you touches it. And that may be the case if Abby is incredibly vulnerable. And that means Manda needs to be super careful.
Right.
However, that's not the case here. So the two of them, this is where it gets a little tricky and your head has to be in the game. Because what Manda can do with Abby is important to understand. That's the plus. Manda can be that connection for Abby when Abby can't have the connections she likes.
And now when we're entering the space, as Teepa mentioned, if I've got a nice firm connection here, I can do a lot of pumping and a lot of comfort. And if I see Abby get really excited when she sees Shelly, I can go, oh, Shelly, oh, hey, Shelly, good to see you. Yeah, how you doing? And what am I cueing Shelly to do?
Anyway, hi.
Hey, over there. Hi, Shelly.
So good to see you. Yeah.
And what am I giving Abby, what she really wanted?
Connection.
Double connection. Now we're super close. And now she's my person because I'm not scared of her.
Mm-hmm.
Because, again, we've already taken all the precautions that we needed.
So Manda started off in supportive stance. And what I talked a little bit about is as you're moving into the space, that instead of walking beside somebody, you might actually, this might be a time, and we don't usually recommend it, but this might actually be a time where you take a shield position because it means you're going to notice things slightly in front. And if you step in front of her to open the door for her now, let's say the door's to the right, then and you turn and you go, oh, Shelly's here.
Shelly's here.
Oh, cool. And now
Oh,
we're going to go in and get Shelly. Yeah. So it gives you a little added time. If you ever really
gives me a pause. I had to stop because your body was
Because
there.
I'm here.
And it wasn't like I couldn't do it. It was like, oh, I gotta wait.
Yeah,
Okay.
hit the pause button. Yeah.
And I noticed that Abby had a lot of excitement, and Amanda moved with her to parallel that excitement.
So when Abby's rhythmic energy went up about, Amanda was right with her. So she had a partner. So there was no aloneness. And that, I think, is the major message when somebody mentions somebody who's more of an extrovert, likes to be around people. So now let's talk about increased risk for people who are further in the disease. So someone who's moved further into this. When somebody is in an emerald state and is feeling lost and that where they are isn't where they should be, there's an increased risk that they'll be trying to get to a place of familiarity, to people who are familiar and to situations that are familiar, but those situations and people may have been from the past. And so the higher risk for them is getting in a situation that puts them in an unsafe situation. And then they have to interact with others because they did go out the front door, they did go down the street, they did go into town, they did go over to the neighbor's house, they did do something. But as a rule, physiologically, they are not considered at higher risk unless they have other health conditions again. Now, when we get to amber, there is high probability the risk is going to be higher if they're in a shared space with people who are also at risk and who have exposure risks.
Is that due to the sensory intolerance of things like gloves or safety precautions?
Yeah, or the sensory need to put my hands on, but also my inability to know that this isn't okay, that isn't okay. Very likely if I sneeze, I'm going to use my hands on my face. And then it also means I put others at risk. And so frequently the greatest risk is I'll be socially isolated, or people will try to restrict my movement or get me not to do things, which increases the probability that I won't do well with that. And if that's the case, then this is where we start to think the other one is dangerous. And the problem with dangerous is people start thinking, I have to get her in a psych admission. We're going to need to do an ER admission. I don't think we can handle her here. And now we start looking at, well, where would I go? And it depends on the degree, but we're talking about surfaces and situations where my risk is higher. But also between amber and ruby, the risk goes up because we actually have a decreased ability for the brain to fight infections, for it to even recognize inflammation and infection, for my ability to suck, swallow, breathe with efficiency already.
So we may see a delayed fever, a delayed reaction, or no reaction at all that we were expecting. So the symptoms may not match the norm, or should we still be looking for similar symptoms?
Well, we could look for the symptoms. The problem is they may not show up, or they may mask themselves. Think about a urinary tract infection is a great example for somebody with this disease. Sometimes the only thing that really changes for quite some time is the distress level or the agitation or the inability to sleep or rest or settle. And so people can misperceive it as simply a typical thing for the dementia when in fact it's more of a coronavirus thing. Or we could be all thinking it's coronavirus and what it is allergies. Because we're getting to that time of year also. So many people are currently having runny noses. And because the fevers aren't always 100% for this population as an indicator, it's tricky. But we do believe that people living with dementia in the later stages are more frail and more risky population, also because they tend to be undernourished and underhydrated to start with, and mobility is an issue.
Okay, so to answer that question that came in short, not necessarily, but possibly. Really depends on that person's health history and their risky or dangerous behaviors, or your own as the care partner, because you might be facilitating something that might become dangerous when it really started as something.
Or if you have a health provider coming into your home who isn't following absolutely best practice and has multiple clients and isn't tuned in. So really providing people the opportunity, there's an opportunity for us to say, oh, you know what, I have an extra shirt I'm going to ask you to put on over, and I have an apron for you to wear over the front of yourself if you don't mind, and here's the sink, feel free. I have some extra gloves. To consider the possibility to take ownership a bit more and say, you know, I just really want everybody to stay safe.
Okay, so just reiterating our old habits that may not be super safe when it comes to spread and viruses in general. So thanks. Any other questions from the PAC team or roundtable discussion pieces? We're going to have another question coming up here in a little bit. So thanks, everybody.
Hey folks, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe to help us spread Teepa's positive approach message around the world. And don't forget to click the bell to get notified when new videos are posted.